For researchers who follow natural gas leaks, this really is nothing new. A recent report found more than 1 million tons of methane leaked in 2013. That's just in the United States. The Environmental Defense Fund, which you heard from in May's report, actually tracks this. It tracked not only how much was leaking, but also the value of that wasted gas. That would be about $330 million. So this is not just an environmental issue, it's also an economic one. Let's get inside this issue now with Rob Jackson. He's an environmental scientist at Stanford University, and he joins us live from California. Why is all of this methane leaking, and how much would it cost to actually fix this problem?
Well, the methane at Aliso Canyon, at the massive natural gas leak, is leaking because of a well blowout, a structural failure where gas coming out at very high pressures is just escaping out of the well into the atmosphere. And it's about $1 million worth of natural gas every day. It's huge. I mean, more broadly, the methane leaks out of our natural gas and oil systems around the world, from well pads where we extract oil and gas from the ground into the pipelines, and all the way down to city streets that supply methane to people's homes for cooking and heating their homes.
Well, Rob, we heard in one of the folks that May Lee talked to, he said that some of these leaks can go on for 30 years without anybody even knowing about it. I mean, how much of a problem is it, and why can't they come up with a fix? I mean, May Lee's saying this is going to take months to fix this issue.
Now, the estimate in Los Angeles for the gas leak is it will take at least to February or March. I mean, that puts it about 4 or 5 months. That's very, very different. It's a very different situation than a leak in a distribution system. In a city, for instance, where we've worked, mapping natural gas leaks block by block across cities, the issue is primarily one of cost. It costs about $1 million to replace a mile of pipeline in a city like New York or Washington, D.C. It's very expensive. So we know the leaks are there, but you can't just run out and fix them all. I mean, on the other hand, there is a lot more that we could do to fix them more quickly.
And what are those things?
Well, for one thing, the public utility commissions, the policymakers cap the amount of money that companies can spend to repair the pipelines. So the companies would love to be able to spend more money, to get the money to be able to repair those pipelines. On the other hand, the companies are paid by ratepayers like me for the gas that they lose. That's not right either. So the union of more money up front to replace old pipelines and then weaning the companies from being paid for the gas that they lose, that's the solution in my mind.
Rob, we've done reports on drilling in shale for gas and oil, a process which is referred to as fracking. There's been a lot of reporting on it of late. There's a tremendous amount of leakage coming from that as well. Why is it so difficult to do this without unnecessary environmental harm?
There is a certain amount of leakage of natural gas that's inevitable. To have a little bit of leakage, though, is not the same as having a lot of leakage. And I think there are different reasons for why some of these leaks occur. Sometimes the local geology is hard, it's very fractured, it's difficult to seal the well. Sometimes it's the companies or the best practices involved. Sometimes people get in a hurry, or like Aliso Canyon, they make mistakes. So it's really a combination of keeping track, having enough watchdog, inspectors to see these wells, to check the pipelines, and then also to keep pushing the companies to improve their best practices.
We're talking a lot about what's happening in Southern California, but what about oversight? What kind of oversight is there around the world in terms of monitoring emissions and leaks?
Well, it really depends on what country you're in. In the United States, it's primarily the role of the individual states to oversee oil and gas mining and movement. So the federal government really has a relatively minor role to play. In the U.S., they can control what happens on federal lands like BLM. In other places in Europe, for instance, it tends to be more top-down and less distributed than here in the U.S.
Is it as big an issue there?
Oh, I think it is in some ways, yes. Europe is full of old cities. If you're downstream talking about distribution systems and pipeline leaks, Europe's a little bit different in that you don't have a lot of oil and gas wells right in the middle of cities and suburbs the way we do here in the United States. So the oil and gas extraction there, the extraction in China and elsewhere tends to be a little more isolated. The U.S. is a bit different in that way.
Rob, I've got one final question for you. This is getting a lot of publicity, a lot of news attention, but it doesn't seem like this issue has garnered a lot of interest in the past. Why do you think this one has really managed to percolate up in terms of public interest?
The Aliso Canyon leak is huge. It's right next to a neighborhood, and I think interestingly, a pretty wealthy neighborhood. The infrared images that show this massive plume of natural gas leaking into the air are, visually compelling. I mean, on the other hand, even at Aliso Canyon, as big as this leak is, you can't see the leak with your naked eye. So you have to have special camera equipment. So it's really what people are feeling, the nosebleeds, the potential health implications. I think those are the things that are finally getting people's attention.
Rob Jackson joining us from Stanford. Thanks so much.